technical committee meeting here for March 7th. We are going to, unfortunately, with our new AV equipment that's being installed, we are in a smaller confines. So thanks for joining. But just a few updates from me before we get started into our full agenda. Wanted to share a few of the leadership team position updates, announcements that's occurred over the last for the last quarter here. John Mayberger has been selected as the Assistant State Conservationist for programs, and so John was formerly the CSP Program Manager here in Nebraska, so he has officially taken over that role as the Assistant State Conservationist for programs. Missy Byers is our Assistant State Conservationist for water resources and easements. Missy's with us in the room today and is taking over in that position for leadership team. Also wanted to mention Neil Dominy has accepted a new position or a position with the National Soil Survey Center Director. And so while he has moved on to that new position, Connor Ward will be the acting Assistant State Conservationist for partnerships for the next several months. So wanted to share a few of the updates with you all from the LT meeting perspective. Also wanted to share that local work group meetings are taking place. Several have occurred already at the end of February, early March, but there are still several yet to occur here throughout March. The listing of those are on the NRCS, Nebraska NRCS website. Wanted to also mention that we are working on details to announce a announcement for wildfire assistance. So similar to what we've done in the past when we have wildfires in the state, we offer an assistance through the Environmental Quality Incentive Program, EQIP for short. So here soon we'll be making that announcement and having an open sign-up period for those impacted from the wildfires. Finally, just wanted to bring your attention that the conservation collaboration agreements that we do every year, a call out funding opportunity, has been announced. It came out yesterday. It's open for 60 days and it will close on May 6th. So wanted to share that with everyone, all the partners on the call, that the conservation collaboration agreements for Nebraska NRCS is open for that funding opportunity, and reach out to Connor Ward, our acting Assistant State Conservationist for partnerships, if you have questions on that. So with that, let's get right into the agenda. And we have first up, it was something that we've had on our radar for the last few months that we wanted to have on the agenda for a state technical committee. Really wanted to highlight and showcase all the great work going on with the climate hubs, the USDA climate hubs. So with the Northern Plains Climate Hub, we have William Shoup, and he's going to help us just share what's going on in the climate hub for USDA, and excited to have you all on the call. And William, I'll turn it over to you.
Excellent. Thanks much, Rob. Yeah, like Rob said, my name is William Shoup. I'm actually the state soil scientist here in Colorado is my full-time job. Been over here in Colorado since 2010, state soil scientist for 12 or 13 years now here in Colorado. So I see Carlos is in the room there, fellow soil scientist. Always good to have him in the room. I like Carlos, and we get along really great and have worked together in the past. So good to see you guys. I'm going to share a slide deck that I have that actually Danelle, and I'll introduce Danelle here in a second. She's on board. Hopefully most of you already know Danelle. And I'm just going to go back into my slide deck here and click present in Teams. Excuse me, and it should come through. And while I do this, I'll shut the camera off to prevent any bandwidth issues. And then just go ahead and let me know whenever you all can see the big screen there that says the overview.
Yeah, we can see.
Excellent. Yeah, so just want to again thank you all for welcoming us. Oh, and there is a typo in here. Sorry, Danelle. I thought I caught this. This says Dr. BJ Shoup. So some of you might hear me referred to as BJ. That's my nickname. You feel free to call me BJ. If you try and find me in the directory, it's under William Shoup. I am not a doctor. I thought I took that off here. I must have forgot. So it's just myself. And what I am is I'm the NRCS representative. I'm the co-lead for the Northern Plains Climate Hub. And I'm relatively new to the climate world. Just started doing this kind of full time here, a few months back. And I have with me Danelle. So Danelle, I'll let you introduce yourself. You want to come on board here?
Yeah, thank you, BJ. Hi,
Sure.
everyone. Danelle Peck, as BJ said, director of the Northern Plains Climate Hub, have been in this role for about 7 years. And over those 7 years, I've been over to Nebraska for various events. I know that lots of faces change in our two worlds, but I recognize some of the names and faces and would love to connect with those of you who I haven't had a chance to interact with. It's awesome to have BJ on board as our co-lead. He's going to share with you what we've been up to, but we've got lots of partnership opportunities and really grateful for the chance to be here today. Don't be shy, reach out anytime you hear something weather, climate related, a need that you're just not sure what to do with or who to reach out to. That's part of our role as a climate hub, is to help connect you to the folks that can help find an answer or a resource or a partner for anything in the working lands world that is affected by weather and climate. Thanks, BJ.
Excellent. Thanks, Danelle. So we'll get right into it here. So what I got is the map of one USDA, the climate hubs, and you can see here everybody who is currently involved and works with this. And there's 11 regional hubs across the country. And we also have a new international climate hub. And I'm not sure where that one's headquartered out of. But as you can see here, the Northern Plains, we're basically Montana, Wyoming, Colorado, Nebraska, and the Dakotas is who this climate hub covers. And previously, you might have met Dr. Mike Strobel, who has been in the West for several years, whose position I'm sort of replacing as he moves into the national lead in some of these programs. So if you see Mike's name out there, that's where that comes from. And Mike's still on board with us. So he's been at the Western Water Climate Center for several years, and I used to work with him when we were doing the snow survey opportunities that we had. So the main office is located in Fort Collins, and it's with ARS, and of course Danelle works for ARS. And what we do is we have a partnership through the 6-state region with not only ARS and NRCS and the Forest Service, but the others that you see listed here. FSA is obviously a part of this too. So kind of taking that one USDA approach that's been handed down to us from up above, and trying to make this work as a partnership through all the agencies. So who are the key contacts? So you can see here, obviously our director, the big boss here is Dr. Danelle Peck, and Wendy Kelly is also with us here. And the top row is kind of the directors and the coordinators. And Danelle, I'm going to hand this over to you. Danelle knows a lot of these folks a lot more than I do, and she can kind of introduce them to you a little bit better. So I'm going to pass the introductions over to you, Danelle.
Thanks, BJ. Yeah, everyone, this is your team in the Northern Plains. We're small, but we're mighty and have lots of connections. And so just depending on what your need is, hopefully we have someone on our team that knows the right connections for you. So BJ mentioned our coordinator, Wendy Kelly. She's located over in Western Wyoming, has a rangelands background and a social science background. But a lot of knowledge. She's been with the hubs actually longer than I have, so lots of connections there. Up in Montana, we have our Ag Risk Associate, Lee Schmelzer. Lee was with Extension for many, many decades before he came over to the Climate Hubs to work with us for a few years. So Lee is really knowledgeable of kind of like state mesonettes, what tools and information can we pull out from that mesonet information, and how can we apply it to farming, ranching, anything like that. So Lee's super knowledgeable and experienced doing outreach information around managing weather and climate risk. Newer to our team is Avery Reynolds. She is a science communications fellow who we have on board for hopefully at least 2 years. And so Avery's really passionate about making science and information about, again, weather and climate and working lands, your programs, making that information more accessible wherever we go as a Climate Hub team. So the science communicators in the room, please know that Avery is really excited to partner and work together. She's also really passionate about 4-H and FFA. And so if you share that interest, please feel free to reach out to Avery. Brand new to our team is a new postdoc with forest experience and expertise, Katie Nigro. And so Katie is a Forest Service employee, but really excited to just kind of see what are the forest or agroforest related needs across our region and how can she help. So that's kind of our full-time team. Those of us who have 100%, that's what we do, is work with hubs. And then on the bottom row is our agency co-leadership. And so my supervisor, Justin Derner at ARS. Justin is from Nebraska, the Valentine area, came from a ranch family there. He's actually headed back to the ranch today if the weather will allow. So strong Nebraska connections there through Justin. BJ, glad to have you on board from NRCS. And then over on the Forest Service side, Matt Reeves, who's actually a rangelands modeling expert. So that's our agency leadership, but we're always looking to bring in additional perspectives from you all. The last thing I'll say on this slide is just that we have several openings, either currently open or that will be opening over the next several months. And these are both at kind of master's level, PhD level. And so if you know anyone who's interested in this world of weather and climate and agriculture, working lands, and also doing outreach, please point them in our direction. 2 openings in particular that I want to highlight today, the mitigation coordinator and mitigation specialist. These are going to be term positions that are made possible because of NRCS. And so an NRCS agreement with our Climate Hub network, making it possible for us to be opening these 2 positions, hopefully this in the next several months. And the job of these 2 positions is really to reach out and talk to you all and see with all the IRA monies out there tied to climate mitigation, what are your needs? How can our hub be helpful to you in trying to carry out those IRA dollars and programs and practices? So the mitigation coordinator will be in charge of reaching out to each state office and trying to, again, without being a burden on you, try to seek what's going well, what are you struggling with, what are some practices that you wish you knew more about the current state of the science knowledge. So that coordinator will bring that information back to us. And then depending on what you tell us, that mitigation specialist position will actually be in charge of going and looking at the science. What do we know scientifically about whatever mitigation practices you all are interested in or struggling with in your area? So please keep that in mind today as BJ goes through the rest of these slides. If you think of any particular mitigation practices that you could use a little more personnel thinking about, talking about, reaching out to people about, please let me know that either in a chat or send me a Teams message or send me an email. It'll help inform who it is that I end up hiring into these 2 roles. Sorry, BJ, that was very long-winded. I'll turn it back to you.
No, all good. So I think now we're going to move over into kind of what we do here, and we talk about the Climate Hub's vision and how it's a robust and healthy agricultural production and natural resources, obviously under the changing climate and the variabilities that we have across these different states, specifically tied to the Northern Plains in particular, and looking at those different aspects of what we can do and what we can bring to the table. It's kind of region-based scientific information that kind of will enable us to do these informed climate-making decisions. And so that's really what we're getting at here, is why we have these different hubs in these different regions, is so that we can make scientific informed decisions while we're looking at climate change and climate variability across the scope of the hub. So how do the climate hubs work? I might pass this one back over to Danelle and let her kind of explain how some of this comes through. and what the vision and approach look like.
Yeah, thanks, BJ. Again, you saw before that we're a relatively small team. We've been growing, super excited to grow, but we've been pretty small for a long time. And so we really work by partnering, by building networks. And so the climate hubs, think of us really as bridge builders between a couple of different worlds. And BJ, if you'll click for me, we'll see one of the sets of worlds we build bridges between. So one of our roles is to help build bridges between the world of climate and weather science and what's happening out on our working lands, our working land managers, and their trusted partners like you all. So our job is to speak enough of both languages and to have one foot in each of these worlds and have networks in both of them and connect, build bridges so that the climate and weather folks understand what your needs are out in the field. And when you have a need out in the field, we can take that to them and work together to find, an answer or a tool or a solution. The other two worlds that we build bridges between are really between the world of science and practice and policy. And so our scientists over at ARS are always really eager to be helpful, but don't always have the luxury of kind of being out and interacting with you all who have boots on the ground. And so part of our job as a hub is to again, have one foot in each world, listening with both ears. And when we hear something from the field related to science, a science need, we take that back to our friends at ARS and our university partners and connect you with folks that hopefully, again, together we can co-develop information or whatever the need might be. So yeah, think of us as bridge builders. Thanks, BJ.
Yep. And our bridging work tends to fall into three categories here. So the first one we have is science and data synthesis, as Danelle was mentioning, and just delivering the relevant information that you all bring to us, the relevant information that you're interested in, tool and technology co-development. So, and we'll get to some of the tools that we have here, specifically even in Nebraska, later in the slide deck that'll kind of showcase some of that. And then outreach. Outreach is huge for us, right? Because we want to be able to go to the field. We want to be able to meet with those farmers and ranchers, those producers and those landowners, and discuss the opportunities that we have that we can do with practices and practice standards that we have here in NRCS. So that outreach is a big piece of the puzzle specifically for the climate hubs. And some of these will be upcoming later on. We'll talk about some of the projects that we do. So science and data synthesis. Danelle, do you want to talk about you're one of the co-authors, I believe, that came out here, if you want to mention this.
Yeah, thanks, BJ. I was lucky enough to be involved in the 5th National Climate Assessment, right? This is the congressionally required report every 4 to 5 years, and was just really fortunate to get invited to participate in the national chapter about agriculture, food systems, and rural communities. So check out, if you haven't had a chance to take a peek at the NCA 5, there's the link for you. I was directly involved in chapter 11, but there's also a really wonderful chapter 25 on the Northern Great Plains. I was lucky enough to be involved in that chapter last time for NCA 4. This year, this time around, I wasn't directly involved with it, but an incredible set of colleagues who worked really hard on the chapter for the Northern Great Plains. So just a really trusted source of scientific information that's been digested for the public into short little chapters. So check it out if you haven't had a chance yet.
And now I'm going to let you talk about GrassCast too, if that's okay.
Yeah, you bet. GrassCast is definitely my baby. So yeah. GrassCast is an example. We just moved from kind of the world of science synthesis into the world of tools and technology co-development. We all know that there's enough tools in the world, so we don't go around just making tools willy-nilly. We co-develop tools when we've heard a need from the field. This was a need that emerged several years ago from the rangelands world, who said, boy, I wish you'd quit handing us just these precipitation outlooks, the seasonal precipitation outlook from NOAA, and just telling us, good luck. I don't know what this means for you as a rangeland manager. That was frustrating for people. They wanted to know, what do these seasonal precipitation outlooks actually mean for rangelands in my area? And we said, wait a minute, our hub lives inside of a rangeland research unit. We can do this translation. We can take one additional step for everyone. and translate that precipitation outlook into a rangeland outlook. And so GrassCast was born. And if you do a couple of clicks here, BJ will get the description of this map. So this is an example of a GrassCast map. It's generally what it looks like. This is an older example. It's not current. But if you look at your area of interest and check out the color is trying to tell you that based on weather that was observed up to the date that the map was made, plus trying to look out across the rest of the upcoming growing season and what might happen with weather over those next several months, that our models are expecting grassland production in your area to be some percent higher or lower than what the long-term average is for your area. And so BJ, go ahead and next slide for me. And actually, you guys helped us develop GrassCast. I don't know how many of you were there back in, I think, probably 2017. But we did a series of workshops in each of our 6 states. We came over to North Platte and did a wonderful workshop with you all. There's a photo, if anybody recognizes themselves in the photo. A half-day workshop where you guys really helped us take what was then just like a little prototype GrassCast and talk through in great depth, like how would you explain this to a client out in the field? How can we make it easier for them to understand it? What type of materials do you need to support using this information in the field? And give a click for me, BJ. These are the actual notes from that North Platte workshop. And you guys really helped us hone what the final GrassCast product looked like. So that's the type of partnership our hub really strives for in everything that we do. And a big shout out to you all for helping GrassCast. It's now in its 7th year of production. It'll be coming out soon. The first GrassCast maps are usually released in early April. So we're starting to work on them behind the scenes, and we'll get those to you soon. Thanks, BJ.
Great. Excellent. So making producer perspectives more accessible to others, just as Danelle talked about some of the products that the Climate Hub produces. So we have kind of another example of the practice and the science here developed with extension colleagues in Nebraska and in other states around the Climate Hub, where story maps, for those of you that have built these story maps before in GIS or kind of know how to make these story maps or how to use these story maps, you can kind of click around and get different perspectives from different people and the way they talk and what they're talking about and what's challenging and the lessons they're learning. And I think, do I have a click here? Kind of showcase some of this. So these are a great way, especially for NRCS folks like us that are GIS users and that are familiar with region-specific language and agricultural producers and viewpoints on this. And the science specifically from ARS and the other partners on there to help you inform practices and to be able to put the product on the ground, so to speak. So you can kind of click through some of the story maps. I believe these are available on our Hub webpage. If you'd like to view some of these more story maps and get some more information, there's a great opportunity there to go and look. And of course, you'll see Nebraska in there as well. Okay, Danelle, you take the Nebraska row crop one here, if you don't mind.
Yeah, this is just another tool that we co-developed with our partners. In this case, it was UNL, and they had a wonderful extension person for a long time, Tyler Williams, who with a little bit of monies from the Climate Hub helped develop this interactive website, which I think is great for, especially for newer employees. If someone is newer to Nebraska, not overly familiar with the row crop systems there, this is a great, easy, fun tool to get thinking really creatively and a little more in depth about how all the many different ways that weather and climate can affect, in this case, the row crop systems in Nebraska. And so this is an interactive website. You can go and select which season you're concerned about. In this case, I've chosen summer. And then you can select what extreme weather conditions you're worried about, or maybe your client is worried about. In this case, we picked a hot and dry summer, and the little farmscape will change. And these little icons, each of these circle icons, you can click on it, and down at the bottom left corner, it'll identify what's the challenge associated with those hot, dry summer conditions. In this case, soil moisture decreasing. It provides a quick tip, kind of very quickly, what are some things that a manager could do to try and help adapt to that situation. And then there's links to UNL resources to learn more about that management practice. So again, I think this is great for newer employees who may be new to the area or new to a particular system, to help them anticipate the types of challenges they might see out there and what could be done about them. Go ahead, BJ. This is a feedlot version of that same tool, again, developed by Tyler Williams and his team at UNL Extension. This one's not interactive, but it still gets at the same thing. And this was co-developed with feedlot operators. So these were the different challenges that they face, whether they're in the winter and spring on the left. And again, is it warm and dry? Is it wet and cold? And then over on the right is the summer and fall, and what challenges they felt like they faced. So we'd love to take this one in the future and make it interactive like the previous one. We just haven't gotten that far yet. Last, I'll say, hopefully you all are very well connected already with your friends over at UNL. I know you're right there in the neighborhood. You guys have an amazing set of weather and climate partners in Nebraska. I'm never too worried about you because you guys have the National Drought Mitigation Center, the High Plains the High Plains Regional Climate Center. You have an awesome state climate office. I know it's under a little bit of a rebuild right now, but just wonderful partners that have worked really hard to pull together, honestly, tools that I carry around with me throughout our region. People are jealous of the Weather Ready Farms program, the Hail No application up in the top right. It's a wonderful website if you have any producers that have been hit by hail and maybe don't have a lot of experience dealing with it yet. So yeah, props to your team there in Nebraska and your partners. This is one of their, this is a report that UNL Extension put together several years ago, but honestly, I still think it's relevant. I still like it. So again, if you're trying to get a little more climate language under your belt and how do we talk about these sorts of things with our ag producers, this is a great report that Tyler helped pull together. And I like in particular these maps that I'm showing. The one on the left is showing kind of long-term changes in climate in Nebraska, in this case, temperatures, but then in more shorter timeframes, just the last couple of decades, what have been some of the shorter term trends. And I love this diagram because it, in the shorter term, there have been changes that sometimes feel different than what the long-term trends are showing. And you'll hear that from people in the field, like, I don't understand. This is what I'm feeling, but this is what they're telling me I'm supposed to be feeling. And this article really helps us understand some of those shorter term trends versus longer term trends, get you more comfortable thinking about it and talking about it when it comes up. And I think this is the last, maybe the last Nebraska brag, but you guys have a couple of really wonderful reports and assessments that have come out over the last several years. So I just wanted to make sure you were aware of these. Again, good science-based information that's specific to Nebraska. And the Nebraska Climate Report is actually right in the process of being updated. So Deb Bathke, I'm sure you guys already know, is your current interim state climatologist after Martha Shulsky moved on to another opportunity recently. But that's Deb's main focus, is to get the Nebraska Climate Report updated, hopefully within the next year. So keep your eyes out for that. I think it'll be a great resource.
Absolutely. And so let's come back around to that the outreach piece that we mentioned. So we talked about the science and technology and others, and let's talk about the outreach and why it's important. Almost every state in the Northern Plains Climate Hub has had the initial Climate Hub conversation, right? So we've been invited to talk at these, and I know Wendy and Danelle have been at these events. There was the Ogallala Aquifer Summit, which was held back in 2018 in Kansas, and then the NRCS Climate Conversations, which is where we've been asked to kind of come and talk to the leadership team or to all employee meetings, where we can talk about the different climate conversations and what we can have here. So what the hubs are basically doing is being invited to these, and this is not only NRCS, but also all the other agencies, and just discussing some of the climate smart and the weather ready things we can do. And actually, I think this Ogallala Aquifer is the one that's upcoming, right? I think I mentioned that happened. That's actually the one that's upcoming. That's over in Liberal, Kansas, March 18th and 19th of this month. So anyone interested in kind of that cross state or that that relationship, you know, please feel free to reach out and get involved in that and see what this can bring to the table for you. So this is kind of typically what's been covered in these climate conversations, and I believe Nebraska has already had one of these climate conversations where we discuss the different things with the climate smart agriculture, and then the discussions and feedback, which is such an important piece of the puzzle, especially us in NRCS being a technical agency and having this partnership with all these other agencies that do have a lot of scientists employed for them that you know, it's a really good initiation point, a really good starting off point, so how we can work together and figure out how the hub can be most helpful to you and your state. I know Nebraska is ahead of the game, so that's really great, but always willing to come back and always willing to talk again, specifically whether you want it to be leadership team meetings or you want it to be I'm sorry if I don't know the terminology in Nebraska that NRCS does, if it's areas or resource teams or how you all do that. But if you have an area meeting or a zone meeting that you want these folks to come out and discuss things, so we can always be available for that too. Previous conversation. So this is a Sarah Thompson thing. Danelle, do you want to explain this quick reference guide?
Yeah, you bet. This is just to say, from that first round of climate conversations, again, we were virtually with you back in December of 2021. It feels like it was just yesterday, but that was a lot of years ago now. But those first round of climate conversations, one of the needs that we heard from that across the country was that you all wished that you just had a quick little 1-pager or 2-pager for your state and for each of your counties that just kind of summarized some of the basic climate statistics. You know, what's average temperature in this county or this state at different times of the year, and what changes have we seen historically in those temperatures or precip? What are some of the projections for this county or this state? And so Sarah Thompson with NRCS, along with Sean Vickers. Sean was a liaison to our hub for a couple of years. That was great. So Sean and Sarah helped pull these climate quick reference guides together, specifically for NRCS, really. Other people are now using them, but they built these with NRCS. So if you scan that QR code or go to that hyperlink, you'll see a list of all the counties in Nebraska, and you can pull this little quick 1-pager so that when you're headed out, you know, to help a client in a particular county, you can look this information up ahead of time and have some sense. What's the top cause of loss in this county? What are some of the trends that they might be feeling or seeing out there? And what are some trusted science resources I can turn to later if needed?
Great. So kind of the end there, we're hitting right on that time piece where we promised you all a half hour. So we're kind of there. So what can we achieve together? So again, we look forward to working with anybody that wants to have more climate conversations or more interest in the field specifically, or any other tools that they'd like to have developed. So again, we're right here in Fort Collins. We're part of the team and got our contact information there. So I'll close it out there. And Danelle, if there's anything you want to add at the end, I know you went through a lot of those Nebraska tools. Thank you so much for doing that. I don't know specifically the Nebraska tools, so I appreciate that opportunity. But Danelle, any closing thoughts?
BJ, just to say again that the second round of climate conversations have been funded by NRCS. And so we will be reaching out to each of our state offices to ask how things are going when it comes to climate mitigation practices in your state. Is there any scientific information? Again, maybe there's a particular practice that you wish you knew something more about, whether it's about the economics of it or the science underlying. What questions about mitigation practices can we help you find the answers to? So yeah, hopefully you'll be hearing from us again and again. We know how busy you guys are and overwhelmed with all the monies and programs pouring in. So want to work together to figure out how can we use our time in a way that's truly beneficial to you all. Thank you so much.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Mr. Lawson. Thank you so much for allowing us to present today. And I hope the rest of your state tech meeting goes really well.
Great, thank you, BJ and Danielle. Appreciate that. And if we have a few moments if we have any questions from the audience here in the office here or virtually, we can take a few questions. And Tammy, any questions in the chat or anything?
I don't see anything.
Okay.
I do have a person that's on the phone. Okay. If you could email me and let me know who 202-913 is, that would be very great. No, I don't have anything else.
I have a quick question. So can you, Mr. Lawson, give me some programs? I'm assuming that, I guess the question I have is there any incentives to producers to promote climate smart practices or collect data? And I know within the NRCS programs, we have cedar tree removal, we have cover crops, but do we have a complete program that says if you go out there, collect this data, do these practices, it's like a CSP, you see what I'm saying? It's all inclusive, and here's your incentive, you get paid so many dollars an acre to do multiple items at the same time. Because I know the Nature Conservancy, I know World Wildlife, they have programs like that where they'll come in and you do a bunch of practices and they'll collect the data all based on, and then they'll give you some incentives for that. Sure. What does the NRCS look like?
Well, I mean, definitely through the Conservation Stewardship Program that you mentioned, that is more of the entire operation for the producer to be able to pick enhancements that they haven't done before, that they're willing to do to take it to the next level. So through CSP, there's it's incentive for doing the work that you have already done, but an additional incentive to take it to the next step. So that comes to mind. But any other thoughts from the group? And then I know, Danielle, you were agreeing with what was being said, so if you have any thoughts as well, I'd appreciate that.
Yep, just pausing in case anybody else in the room wanted to add before I jumped in here. Yeah, so really great question. And I think what you're describing with groups like TNC is a little bit of a USDA sister approach to NRCS's programs, right? And that's that Climate Smart Commodities Partnership Program. And so that's monies that USDA are using about, I think about, what is it, $3 billion that they allocated to private partners, private organizations and NGOs who then partnered in some cases with groups like NRCS to offer exactly what you just described. So when they were developing that partnership for climate smart commodities, our agencies really weren't allowed to interact with that process because it is a separate pot of monies. When they were developing the call for proposals and reviewing proposals, our Climate Hub was not allowed to kind of be involved in that. But those have been announced. Those are getting rolled out in the field. So you can now go, and there's a really wonderful navigation tool out there now. Oh, I wish I had thought to put that in the slides. If you search Climate Smart Commodities navigation tool, NRCS and some other partners helped pull together that tool that very much more quickly helps you find out which of those climate smart commodities projects are active in your state, what practices and types of systems are they focused on, how can you reach out to them to try and get involved. So that was just a little bit more about those Climate Smart Commodities Partnership Program.
Thanks. I just get a lot of questions from producers, and I'm trying to narrow their focus and say, okay, look at this program or look at this.
Yes.
So
I think the RCPP, like how you mentioned too, would be a great one where the partners are collecting the data, and there's conservation practices for the farmers there, or ranchers, and you mentioned TNC, the WWF, so say that would be through an RCPP program.
thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? All right. Thank you, Danielle and BJ. Appreciate the time and the update. All right. Moving right along, we have the Farm Service Agency program updates and cost docket reviews for Jana.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jana Ingerson-Laws, and I am the Conservation Specialist with the FSA side of things. I gotta get used to being in this new building. So, Tammy, do you want me to join the meeting and share my slides, or is it easier for you?
It might be easier if she opens it. It doesn't matter either way. Honestly, it doesn't really matter.
I'll just join and I'll mute myself.
Okay.
And that might be the easiest. So bear with me here. I'm used to doing this virtually.
Same thing, just new.
Beautiful facility, by the way.
Yeah,
So,
yep. So, yes, and really for the June 13th, the next state tech committee meeting, we really hope to be able to, we'll have a lot more things functioning and working. They're in the main conference rooms right now installing the AV equipment. So hopefully that will be up and running for us here. But yes, thank you.
Okay, so if everybody can see, it looks like my PowerPoint got up there. We are at the March 24 State Tech meeting. So get my slides to advance. Again, here's my contact information. Pat Lechner's not here today, but he would be the FSA program chief. He's price support, conservation, both, so he kind of delves into everything. And I noticed that is not his contact info. So
I was going to say that earlier. I'm like,
that's his phone number, but email me if you ever need his contact info. I'll get it on for next state committee, state tech. All right, we're going to look at CRP in Nebraska right now. We actually just had some really good conservation partner meetings, and Pheasants Forever had their state habitat meeting, and we went over a lot of this information here at the beginning of February. Right now, what CRP looks like in Nebraska, we've got about 2.2 million acres. We rank number 3 in the nation for highest number of CRP acres out there. When we look at contract numbers, that would put us at 20,457 total contracts in the state of Nebraska. And if we want to break it down further, CRP has practices, of course. When you sign up for CRP, you've got to decide what kind of practice you want to implement out there. So the top 3 practices we've got in Nebraska is CP88, which is our grasslands CRP. CP2 is normally under a general type of sign up. That's our establishment of permanent native grasses. And then we've got CP25. Overall, that's called rare and declining habitat, but it's basically native grass prairies. It depends on the region you're in. We kind of have maps that break it down into what type of native grass prairie is throughout the state of Nebraska. So that's just a real broad overview of what CRP looks like as of about a month ago in the state of Nebraska. This map is a good visual representation here. It's color-coded kind of according to where we see most of our CRP. Out west, the reason for this is grasslands. Grassland CRP has really, really dominated our CRP signups in the last couple years. I'm going to have a chart down on a couple slides from here that shows the impact. Grasslands has been around for a while now, but it has really skyrocketed in enrollment, especially out west, where we've got those grazing acres. It's a working lands program. Producers are really taking advantage of that, and we are seeing a big spike in those grassland sign-up numbers. This slide is going to break down, of course, CRP is always confusing. We've got all these different sign-up types with CRP. This slide is breaking down how many acres and contracts we have in each type of CRP. Continuous CRP are things like filter strips, quail buffers, kind of those more smaller type of contracts that are going to get the really environmentally sensitive areas enrolled. Clear 30 is a new program that came with this farm bill. It offers expiring CRP participants to go into a 30-year contract. It's got to be a water quality type of practice, things like filter strips, grass waterways. We have some, we haven't gained a ton of traction. I think as the years pass on, if they keep this around in the next farm bill, maybe we'll see those numbers get a little higher. 30-year contracts are always kind of intimidating to people though, so I don't think that's why we haven't seen a huge takeoff on that. HELI is highly erodible lands, so that gives producers the chance to get those super sensitive EIs of 20 or greater type of erodible lands into CRP. It opens up the door to them to put it into a general sign-up type of practice, like native grasses, without bidding in. FWP is our farmable wetland program, so those are things like wetland buffers, etc. And we've got about 2,800 acres in there. CREP, we have the Platte Republican CREP out kind of along the central western part of the state, and we've got quite a few contracts still under CREP, about 41,000 acres. General CRP is our bidding type of system where you have to bid in to get into those contracts, and those are the bigger type of grass practice acres in general, about 339,000 acres. And then grasslands, that's our chunk right there, 1.6 million acres. So that's why we've seen those numbers skyrocket. It's just a massive amount of acres compared to regular CRP. Really taken off here. Like I said, this slide here shows those trends. This is just grassland CRP. So the darker blues and green colors, that's where we have the heaviest participation in that grassland CRP program. This side of the state, we don't see a lot. I mean, we don't have the space. People kind of tend to overgraze. You still have to follow grazing plans. So it's really out west and north of us too, kind of north central part of the state is where we see the highest enrollment numbers. This slide is great, and I want to thank Jenny with Games and Parks. She actually had made this for our meeting last month. I think this gives us a really good visual representation of what has happened with CRP in the last years of 1986 on. It breaks it down into that color code. The darkest line is the overall. If we were to add all of our CRP acres up, what those trends have looked like since 1986 when the program first took off. As you get down into the red line, that's general CRP, and you can tell by that line, we kind of really spiked back in 2006 and 7, and it's gradually just declined over time. Continuous CRP is that light blue line, and you can tell that one has kind of gone up, it's kind of leveled out. I wouldn't say it's decreased as much as general has, but the big difference is the gold colored line. Grassland CRP started about 16, 17, and you can just see how that has spiked over the last few years. It hasn't been around that long, yet the numbers have really taken off on that. So I like the way that chart really gives us a visual representation of what's going on in the world of CRP. We're really gravitating towards grassland CRP more than anything else. This slide also shows kind of the distribution of what that grassland CRP looks like versus CRP regular lands. So the goldenrod yellow color is something that is grassland. So that's just our normal strict grassland practices. To go to grassland CRP, you don't have cropping history, working lands program. Versus the green dots are more of our cropland that's been converted to grassland. So the green is those areas kind of more like we see as we expect on the eastern side of the state, where we're putting cropland into grassland versus the western side of the state are existing grasslands that went into the grasslands program. Where green is crop ground being converted over to CRP on that map there.
You know what would be interesting is to have red dots showing how much cropland has, or how much grassland has gone to cropland interspersed in there. Because by that, it would look like we're converting a lot of crop ground to grass, but I don't know that that's the case.
No. I would say it's not. We'll try to do that. I'll work and see if we can get a grass to crop, because it would be probably also eye-opening. So I'll write that down.
Your crop to grass would be the short-term, 10-year lease, whatever.
Yeah, they're gonna be just the minimum 10 to 15 years are what CRP, and grassland CRP is the same. The only 30-year option under CRP is that clear 30, which they're not gonna be a big impact, especially right now. We've only got 60 acres, so we don't have much at all. Okay, if we look at kind of a trend of what might happen down the road with CRP, this is a list of our contracts that are expiring by year. And you can really see when those grasslands contracts, none of them have expired yet, because that program just started here in the 17 or so, 16. So as we get down into 2030 on, you're really seeing a spike in 35, 36, 37, 38. That's when we're going to see a lot of these current grassland contracts expiring. So it'll be interesting. It'll be a lot of workload, and we'll see if people go back in. They seem to work. I would assume our numbers would stay strong on it, but we don't ever know what new farm bills are going to bring either down the road. This year for 24, we actually don't. When you look at that chart there, there's a chunk of continuous CRP signing, but expiring, but this year is kind of lower on numbers for expiration, and so is 29. That's pretty low too. So we don't have a ton of contracts expiring this year and a few years from now. 26, 27, we might have a push there on stuff expiring. All right, next couple slides are going to talk about the Farm Bill extension and how it impacts CRP.
I had a question in the chat, sorry to
Yep.
interrupt you. It said, and Brad Levin asked, interesting map, could you produce a similar map of total current enrollment in general, continuous, and grassland CRP?
We can work on it. I'll get a hold of Jenny Prentisall with Games and Parks. She's been my helpful map person, and I appreciate it. But we'll work and see what we can get put together.
Sorry.
Nope, thanks Tammy, and I'll write that one down too. Any other questions on the chat? Okay. So this Farm Bill extension that was signed in November of last fall gives us a 1-year extension basically of the 18 Farm Bill. So we got CRP reauthorized to go through September 30th of 24. There was a little time frame at the end of last year. We couldn't do anything. We couldn't take new offers or approve new contracts until January 12th. That's when we started a continuous sign up. So we are currently accepting offers under continuous. It's a little different this year under a continuous sign up. Normally under continuous, we take offers, get conservation plans written, you approve them, the contract can start the month after. This sign up 61 national office is going to have to use batching periods due to the fact we cannot exceed the national cap of 27 million acres. So I know we have a few million acres open, but to avoid spilling over, we are going to do a batching period. So under continuous, it's non-competitive, but it's going to be first come, first served. So since the 12th of January, our county offices have been taking those continuous offers. They haven't been able to approve anything like we normally do. So basically, they're taking offers first come, first served. Anything submitted by March 15th, which is going to be next Friday, that's when National is going to kind of shut the software off and do a batching period. So they're going to look at everything in the system that's submitted as an offer and make sure we don't exceed that statutory cap. And if we're good, everybody will be approved. If we were to, for some reason, get to that cap, they'd then have to go look at first come, first serve. I don't think we're going to meet the cap, but they've got to do that just to make sure we don't exceed that. Since it's a statutory law, we can't exceed those acres. Some considerations we've had to tell people to keep in mind. Again, earliest possible start date on contracts under continuous is going to be May 1st due to that batching period. We have to wait. National said they would probably be announcing these about April 1st. And so by the time we write conservation plans, etc., the earliest start date would be May, which isn't ideal for continuous because most participants are out there wanting to try to seed before May. So We do have an option that if you're not under a current contract, you can defer your start date up to 6 months from the approval date of the contract, or the local office can work, you know, with the planning and stuff. We can get a contract date a little later, yet it doesn't put us in an ideal position, basically. Probably not going to get continuous CRP seeded this year is what it looks like, at least this normal seeding season. General Sign Up 62 was just announced this past weekend during Pheasant Fest. So we did just get this information Monday. They announced it March 2nd. The sign up dates were March 2nd through March 29th are going to be our sign up. So a 4-week sign up. It's kind of condensed. Normally General, they give us a couple months to do sign up. But with the way CRP is this year, it's basically kind of on a crunch. We're way later than normal doing a general sign up essentially. So in order to get everything else lined up, we got to get these general offers in the system and ranked. So producers are going to have till the 29th of March to put an offer in. The contract start dates on all the general sign up 62s are October 1st of this year. Our max rental rate is the same as it's been under this farm bill, where you can get $240 an acre max. The next couple slides touch base on soil rental rates for 2024. Along with that general sign up, essentially also came our fiscal year 24 CRP soil rental rates. So these are what we're paying participants to compensate for foregone income, basically. And we take the 3 top predominant soils and do a weighted average of that times the soil productivity factor in order to get those rates. The data they use at National is NAS data. So I want to push, it's important to fill out NAS data. We had quite a few counties this year. What happens if we don't have the NAS data is the counties get a default to an average rental rate. A prime example is we had Hamilton County default to $53 an acre for non-irrigated. I think last year they were above $160 an acre. So that's not ideal. And that's why NAS data is so important for CRP, is because that's what's driving our rental rates. So if they don't get responses, we default to a state average, which if you're clear out west might be good, but this part of the state, it's not going to be so great. And the national office does give counties the chance to submit proposals for alternative rental rates. So it's not like we're stuck with it yet. To really capture an accurate rental rate, we need people to fill out NAS surveys so we can get good rental rates throughout the state. All right, so that kind of wraps up the world of CRP right now. I do want to touch base quick on the ECP program, emergency conservation. Unfortunately, as it has been over the past few years, I think we've ran ECP for wildfire for 5 years now. I would say since the 2019 flood, ECP is a normal program. So I don't see it going away anytime soon. Unfortunately, it is a big workload on our counties when they run it, but it's meant for disasters and it's meant to help those producers out there. So right now we kind of have our eye on the Betty's Way fire, though it's Lincoln, Custer, Logan. I don't have the total acres, but I know approximation was about 71,000 acres damaged by that fire. We don't have an actual sign up going on in any of those counties yet. I know the county offices, they've had some meetings scheduled for next week. We're in the process of assessing all the damage. I know Chuck has been working on our side on FSA trying to get some fire damage maps to measure those areas and get a good idea of what happened out there and where. So once we get everything together, essentially, those counties will have to send in a request to National to implement for that sign up. Common practices we use for wildfires would be EC1, that's debris removal, and it's going to remove the damaged fence that was damaged in the fire. EC3 would be replacing or restoring permanent fences. So we can do fence repair, basically. Otherwise, we replace them and they have to go back to NRCS standards when we replace that fence. EC5 is a new option. It just popped up. It used to be in the old provisions of ECP. It went away for a few years. In the last year, they brought that back. So it's basically for wind erosion control measures. So this can cover such things as cover crops, chiseling, contour, cross slope chiseling, and deep plowing. basically kind of to help keep that soil in place is what we want to do. A lot of times after the fire has happened, it's burned through the cover crop or the crop stubble that might be out there, and it leaves that dirt loose. So there are options back again with this program that we might be able to pay some cost share on that. The biggest thing I would note to anybody that has damage and future disasters, if we run into any more this summer, documentation, maps, photos. Photos go a long way. I always tell people take photos in those disasters. Those photos go a lot longer and more information to national basically when they're looking at approving those requests to implement. Normal cost share, we're going to pay up to 75% of allowable cost to implement approved practices. If it's limited resource, beginning farmers or ranchers, socially disadvantaged, it's a 90% type of cost share rate. There is now in the last couple of years, a 25% advance payment option. So basically, if you come in and apply for ECP, once we approve your application, you have an option to get a 25% advance on all practices. In the past, it was only on fencing, and now they've opened up that you can get a 25% advance payment on all the practices. Or you could choose certain practices too. It's really up to the participant. There is a rule though, you have to provide proof of receipt within 60 days if you take that advance payment. So you're gonna have to come in and provide proof of expenditure basically of that advance payment in order to keep it. Another huge note on ECP is you have to have approval before you start any restoration work. This is really due to all of our environmental laws and rules. You can't go start digging beneath plow zones essentially if you're going to get federal money. So you do not want to start any of those practices until you get a written approval letter saying you're okay to start working.
So Jana, a quick question on that. I was part of the last technical committee meeting, and I think this was brought up. A practice that it paid on was snow removal for the big snows, and that it was retroactive. So I've called our county FSA, Knox County, and they're not familiar with that. Matter of fact, they said they've talked to the State Department several times, and they can't find where that's a payable practice. So to feed livestock, they specifically asked, was it for road clearing or was it to feed livestock and get access to livestock? So where do I send them? Because they're saying they're not finding it.
Have patience.
Okay.
There is an option for ECP for snow removal. National put that out, I think, as a national override announcement. We have been in discussions. There's a lot to work out with that. And so National has been working on kind of fine tuning the implementation of it. It's not been easy as everybody thought it may. So it is going to be retroactive still. Any disasters from 10/1 of 22 forward, winter storm, I should say, snowstorm. The fine details of it, that's why we haven't actually started any signups. And I know the whole country's in that same kind of wait and see. So there is going to be help available. It's going to be kind of, we're waiting for those fine-tuned details of it. So keep documentation. I would still encourage people to be documenting. I know it's retroactive, that's hard, but if producers did snow removal back since 10/1 of 22 is the date we're looking at.
Okay.
And I know National has to set some precedences of like how much snow, presidential disasters, etc. Those are kind of the details they're working out. So stay tuned. We'll announce it with you guys as soon as everything gets finalized, and watch for press releases. But it's in the works. It's just not been as easy to just throw it out there and let people start implementing it basically.
Okay, so no contact people, watch the bulletins.
Yeah, watch bulletins, yeah.
Okay.
We're kind of at a standstill till National's supposed to reissue kind of the notice they had sent out to our offices that gives them the details. So we're all kind of at a hold and wait. But I can tell you, we've been in a lot of discussion with the National office over the last month plus. So it's just trying to work out a way to get this program to work and also for our county offices to implement it. It's a lot of workload to put on them too. So we're trying to get that all fine-tuned. National's working on it. I'm hoping here in the next few weeks we'll see something, but stay tuned, because that's still gonna be an option.
Thank you.
It's just trying to get the details together.
And it is ECP, it'll
Yeah,
fall
it'll
under
be
this.
under ECP, Emergency Conservation Program for Snow Removal. Good question.
What is the trigger that makes ECP eligible and what is the scale?
A county, it depends on the disasters. It's got to be a natural disaster for the most part. And with fires can be tricky because it typically says caused by like lightning. Yet if we can show natural conditions like wind, dry conditions, we've got to add that information to the data basically. And then the county committee has to decide if they want to implement it. And they send in a request to national and ask to implement. So, and each, like drought has specific measures, fires have, so it depends on the disaster is what it's gonna depend on. But normally it's gonna be something too costly for somebody to producers to rehabilitate on their own. Natural disaster, getting that ground back to what it was prior to the disaster. And if it wasn't functioning before the disaster, we're not able to pay cost share for it too. So there's a lot kind of involved with ECP. I should say a lot involved, but it depends on the triggers, the disaster, what we're looking at overall.
So a county could initiate requesting that. It wouldn't have to be a presidential
Correct.
or a governor's
Correct.
statement of emergency.
Yeah, correct. It's all up to the local county committee right now, is how it works. They have to look at, there's thresholds they have to meet in order to ask for it, essentially. But it's up to the county committee to put that all together, and they send up a request to implement that comes through us at the state office and up to national. And then national is the ultimate overseer that says, yes, you can go ahead and start a sign up and implement the program.
Okay. And so my second part of that was the scale of it. So we're talking about a county, or are we talking about an individual producer such as
It can go by,
pasture on fire?
the county committees are the ones that ask to implement, but we've had cases where it's only a portion of a county. It could be if one producer's area, it's got to go back to, is it too costly for you to rehabilitate? And doesn't meet, there's several other thresholds depending on the disaster it is. So, but yeah, there's times like half a county might implement it and not the other half, if that part of the county is the only damaged area. Or if a tornado goes through, a lot of times tornadoes, follow a path. And so we can implement ECP along that path, basically, is how it will work.
Okay.
Okay,
Katie's going to have more to add to that later because we're looking at this as well.
okay, yeah, reach out. Because we're trying to get this all put together. We want to help people the best we can with this program because it's a good program.
Well, and as a producer, I just want to say thank you to the FSA because our place, come full circle with climate change. We've been involved in the 2012 wildfires that demolished our ranch. We were involved in the 2019 bomb cyclone that flooded. We were just upstream from the Spencer Dam, or downstream. We were in 3 years of D4, D5 drought, and then we coupled all that with 70 inches of snow in 2023. And the workload that the local FSA offices did is unbelievable. And so appreciative of all the work, time, and efforts because those people were swimming, as we all were,
Yeah.
but so appreciative.
And thank you. Because I know our workload is just my workload is unimaginable. And we have county offices with low staff and doing all these programs, like you said, since the bomb cyclones, and it has been nonstop.
And
so.
something's happening with our weather to have 400
Yeah.
or 500 year advance in 10 years type deal.
Well, we look at the history of ECP, like I said, we've ran it every year since 2019. And before that, we ran it on occasion, but it's been every single year we've had an ECP sign up somewhere in the state. So that shows to me something's happening.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right, the last couple slides I wanted to add, this just came through kind of hot off the press late yesterday when I was working. The Deputy Administrator for Farm Programs, due to the wildfires, he has went ahead and issued a memo that's going to authorize the emergency haying and grazing of CRP for all counties in those listed states. It's kind of any county or any state that may be near Texas, Oklahoma, Nebraska. And the reason he's doing this is due to the fires that we've had. And he's kind of trying to be proactive as we can to help those participants out or producers that are affected. So starting yesterday, late, this memo is basically going to authorize every single county. Normally to do haying and grazing under emergency provisions, you have to be in a D2 status since the beginning of the program year, which would be last fall. But with this memo, he's basically saying all counties in the listed states can use emergency haying and grazing if you were affected to that by the fire. So there is a little secondary portion in there. I don't know how I worded it here. Yeah, grazing rights and haying authority may be donated to livestock producers affected by wildfires only. So it's not like we're opening the door up to just everybody to emergency hay and graze. There's going to be secondary documentation needed. We call it a CCC 576 as a notice of loss. That can be filed to show that whoever's getting the hay or graze is affected somehow by that wildfire. So there's normal haying and grazing provisions involved, but we're also going to be asking, our offices are going to ask for a 576, which is a notice of loss, or we can take a written statement certifying how you're affected by the wildfire. How is it affecting the hay or grazing? And it's going to those producers affected. So it's not like we're just opening the door wide up and letting everybody emergency hay and graze just because they want to. We've got to show that there was a need, and it's going to go to those producers that are affected by the wildfires somehow. So basically this memo gets us from now until the beginning of nesting season is the authority. So it's going to open up emergency haying and grazing until May 1st, because our nesting season is May 1st in Nebraska. So producers can go ahead and try to emergency hay or graze. We always have non-emergency haying and grazing options, but there's a penalty with that. It's a 25% payment reduction. Emergency, there's no kind of payment reduction. So it's really meant to help those people out there affected by wildfires and try to get them some hay or grazing ground on those CRP acres. All right. And that is all I have. Appreciate everybody's attention and questions today.
Any additional questions in the chat? No? Okay. All right. Well, thank you for the update. Very good information. Appreciate that. We'll keep moving right along on the agenda, and next up is the conservation program update with Cammie. So Cammie, as you may remember, she was in as acting assistant state conservationist for programs right after Brad had retired, and so her term is finishing up on Friday. So I want to officially say thank you to Cammie for helping out the last 4 months here at the state office. So appreciate your leadership, and she will give us our program update today.
Good afternoon. As Rob said, I'm Cammie Kerner, and tomorrow will actually be my last day up here, so this is kind of my bittersweet. And also thank you to Jana, because I lived through one of the wildfires, and I agree, the help and the workload those FSA goes through is very much appreciated by the producers. I'm going to start off just going over some of the IRA stuff, which is the Inflation Reduction Act that we're working through right now for EQIP and CSP. We took applications for our general CSP and EQIP until November 17th, and we continued to take applications after that until March 1st for the IRA specific practice applications. For EQIP right now, 93% of the funds for EQIP IRA have been pre-approved. So they may not be obligated yet. 40% of the funds have been obligated. It's just work in progress from pre-approval to obligation. So there's where we sit with those. The goal to have those obligated is March 31st of this year. IRA specific, and I kind of covered this last time when we met but it's enough different. I went ahead and left it in here just in case anybody has questions or we had different people here. To be eligible for IRA, we have to have one or more of the core practices or activities in the CSAF list, which is the IRA list of practices, have to be planned in the contract. You can have facilitating practices or activities included in those, but they have to directly support one of those core practices. IRA and non-IRA funds can't be combined in a contract. So like now when we're kind of getting towards the end of funding, we can't take a little bit of the IRA money and supplement it with some of our other money. We can't do that. The other thing we can't do is take a practice that is IRA and then also non-IRA practice and put those into one contract. So the contracts are specific to the funding one way or the other. All of our IRA practices and activities have to be completed by September 30th of 2031, which so today that's not a big deal. A lot of our contracts are 2 and 3 year contracts, CSP are 5-year contracts. But as we move forward, we're gonna have to start looking at that and being careful how we plan stuff in our practices. And then even take it a step further, because a lot of times on the land, we have a great plan to have something completed in 2030, and Mother Nature comes into play, and then we have another situation. So there's gonna be some new thought processes that will have to happen for the NRCS employees with that money. And the payments on this do count towards our payment limitations. So that's another item we have to be aware of. On the next couple slides, it's the list of practices that are eligible for IRA. The ones in yellow were ones that were added in 2024 for this fiscal year. But everything in this list are eligible practices. I won't read them off, I'll just kind of scroll through them slowly. Cover crops has been a big one that we've done. Just going through and looking to see.
So Cammie, before,
Yeah.
so is this only for IRA or are these also for non-IRA
Good
equipment
question.
CSP?
So all of these are eligible for IRA and non-IRA. But this list specifically is the only list we can fund through IRA as a core practice and facility. And in the, I'm gonna say the middle column, that's our core practice list to the right, make sure it's the right for everybody. Those are the facilitating practices. So an example for that would be a 382 for fence, you cannot do unless it's supporting a 327. On its own, it's not eligible, but if it's tied to a 327, it can be.
I want to say 10-4.
We have just some more of the practices, the irrigation pipelines, those were added this year, irrigation practices in general. And that's been highly utilized. And prescribed grazing is another one that we do a lot with the facilitating practices with those. Just some more, the pumping plant, range plantings are all. For EQIP IRA, our allocation was $29 million. We allocated 12 million towards state fund pools, and then the balance of that, almost 17 million, got dispersed throughout the field, the different NRDs for local funding control. General EQIP, so now we're back into looking at our entire list of practices being eligible for that. We had an original allocation of just over $21 million. The state fund pools got 13 million of it, and our local fund pools then got the 7 million dispersed through those. So our deadline for EQIP was November 17th for the general. Now we're we worked through our IRA. Now we're gonna work through our general, or we'll be starting to shortly. The deadline to have our general done is April 5th for the ranking process. At that point, then the state specialists will go through and start pre-approving those contracts. We do have the opportunity to have special initiatives as well with disasters. Nebraska has chosen to have the state wildfire initiative. Rob kind of mentioned that early on. The areas affected by that wildfire, like say the North Platte one, if there's additional wildfires through the year, they are also eligible for this. The practices that NRCS is using for those, or has eligible for that, will be the cover crop, prescribed grazing for deferment, and then mulching was added this year as a new practice with that as well.
Would mulching include hydroseeding?
You know, I don't know the answer to that. Where they just added that this year and where it's in the Sandhills area. I'm guessing it's for the sensitivity with the sand soils that they were doing that. So I don't know the answer to that, but I can find out for you if you'd like me to.
It's a question. I'll look it up.
Moving on to CSP, the first slide here is going to talk about CSP renewals from fiscal year 2024. So these are contracts that started January 1 of 24. So we processed these last fall. We had an obligation of just under $5 million for 70 contracts total. This was highly affected because of payment limitations being in an old farm bill. So if somebody had a CSP contract 5 years ago, they were under the same farm bill. If they had a $150,000 contract, they could only have $50,000. That's all they had left for eligibility. And so that affected a lot of people who may have renewed otherwise. For CSP for 2024, not the renewals, we had a general allocation of the 22 million. For IRA, we had just under the 15 million. So for CSP total for this year, we'll have a $37 million allocation. Some of that money will get used for the CSP renewals that we'll be working on this fall. And right now, IRA funds are 95% pre-approved. The CSP IRA sign up, we took those until March 1st. We received 232 applications with an average contract of $100,000. We're looking at about 147 contracts if that average holds true. I think there's the thought they might be a little bit lower, although I'm not sure that we're really seeing that as they're coming through, so we may not get quite that many. That was an original thought, but now with time coming through, it's looking different. So, and that IRA for CSP, just like EQIP, is a first come, first serve. So the later applications, we probably will not have funding for. There is a minimum threshold. For CSP, that score was a 70. Yeah.
Is that date correct? March of 23, that was a year ago.
No, that is not correct.
So some of us are still stuck in 23. But anyway, Mary Reese has
Yes.
she has something on the chat. It says, we included 484 in our panhandle wildfires in 2021 as well. Significant ground disturbance for roads in 2021 and in 2024, wind erosion if needed. Note it was not used in 2021, but we had it available.
There you go.
Going back to that.
Yep.
Yeah, sorry, she just popped it up, so, or I just had it popped up, so.
Thank you, Mary. And we'll pass the deadline. We took applications all the way through the end of this 2024, no matter what. So now looking at our 2025 renewals, because we just got done working through our 2024s, but because of the way the renewal process works, we turn around and we start working on the 2025s almost immediately after that. And so those letters have been sent out, so the field offices and the producers can start working together to look at the operation, look at activities that they would like to do with those. So those letters have been sent out to let those producers know that they're eligible for that and start working with their county offices to see what that would look like for them. And it would be really nice if we could have a new farm bill before those came into play, or we're gonna get caught in that again. CSP Classic. That deadline was in 23. We had 436 applications for the Classic sign up. Again, the 100,000 has been an average that we've just had around forever. So they're planning on about 200 contracts for that. The majority, or the money for CSP, that all gets dispersed throughout the state to the different NRD areas, so that every area across the state can get contracts funded, and it doesn't all end up in just spotty areas. And we will continue ranking on those until May 3rd and obligate contracts after that. Yes.
Bother you again. So Kaylee Olson said, just confirming, in other words, it sounds like Nebraska will have no problem spending down the IRA funds.
That is correct. By the end of the month, IRA should be pre-approved and obligated.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Rob mentioned this earlier as well. We have local work group meetings going on. They're being held across the state, and that happens every spring. The dates, times, and locations are available on our website, and I do have it up on the screen if anybody wants that. And that Nebraska 2024 local work group meeting scheduled is the name of the actual document where they're at. And if anybody wants that, I can send that out to them. It is open to all partners and to the public. Common items on the agenda would be resource concern priorities, input on prioritization tools and ranking pool questions, keeping in mind that now Nebraska has to have one prioritization tool statewide. And so as much as in the past, Tri-Basin NRD, where I was from, we had a prioritization tool, and I worked with my local work group to decide where we were going to spend our money. We can no longer do that. And so we can still give our input at local work group, we send that up, but we have to understand that that looks a little bit different at the state level. We will review practice payment schedules and discuss preferred application and ranking cutoff dates during that meeting. There may be other things covered as well. Those are just some of the common agenda items. And next up for programs, I guess before I hand it off, do we have any questions? Because then I'm going to hand it off. Anything in the chat, Tammy? Are we good?
Good.
Okay. So now Missy is going to take over and cover the slides on ASAP. Yep.
Nice to meet everybody. I am Missy Byer. I'm the new assistant for water resources and easements. I've only been on the job since the end of January, so pretty new. Still learning a lot about easements. So far, for 2024, the applications for the agricultural conservation easement program were taken year-round, but we did have a cutoff on November 13th, 2023 for consideration for FY24 funds. This was for all of the ASEP programs, including the wetland reserve easements, the wetland reserve enhancement partnership easements, agricultural land easements, and the grasslands of special environmental significance. We're using appraisals to determine our acquisition costs for all WREs. We have a geographic area rate cap, that's a GARC, of 90% of the appraisal costs. But those rates are not allowed to exceed $12,970 per acre for irrigated cropland, or $9,320 per acre for all other types of land. Next slide. Too many computers. For 2024, we were allocated $2 million for WREs. We were allocated $826,290 for the Wetland Reserve Enhancement Partnerships. In our January funds assessment, we were allocated $2,821,563 for agricultural land easements. And then we received $554,631 for our stewardship funds for WREs and WRPs. And just for repair and maintenance on existing easements.
Agricultural land easements, would they be like, would you use Nebraska Land Trust? Am I dotting the i's right there?
I think the WRPs would, yes.
Okay.
WREP. We have some with Ducks Unlimited, I know. I think Nebraska Land Trust is also involved.
Okay.
So we received 11 WRE eligible applications on 2,908 acres. 5 of those were for IRA. None of those IRAs were funded, unfortunately. We did not receive any eligible WREPs or ALEs, but we did receive 5 applications for grasslands of special environmental significance. That'll cover about 10,000 acres. Our WREP agreement in the Rainwater Basin area is in its last year. We are planning to replace it with a new WREP agreement. The notice of funding opportunity is expected anytime now. The WREP allows parcels in a geographically defined area to be ranked and funded separately from the rest of the state's applications. Moving forward, we are preparing a funds request of approximately $1.8 million for the April funds assessment to make an offer for our top rank WRE application on 1,146 acres. This will include acquisition and restoration costs on those acreages. We are finalizing legal boundary surveys on 3 WREs that we acquired in 2023. And we are finalizing a prepayment review on 1 WRE from 2022. Like I said before, we did not get any IRA funding for WRE, and all WREs that were older than 2022 have been closed and recorded. For ASTEP on agricultural land easements and grasslands of special environmental significance. There's a lot of acronyms in my program. We received Farm Bill funding for all 5 of our GSS applications. Those were in Dawes, Sheridan, and Thomas counties. We didn't get any IRF funding for ALE or GSS either, and all ALEs and GSSs older than 2022 have been recorded and closed. We are still finalizing 3 ALE GSS deed reviews from 2022 and 2023. We have one last easement program to discuss, and that is the Emergency Watershed Protection Program, floodplain easements. We've received 21 applications for 5,590 acres, and we've requested about $20 million for those. 14 of the applications were canceled by the landowners or were found ineligible, but 7 people accepted our offers, about 800 acres. 5 of those easements were closed on 235 acres. We still have 2 easements pending. Those were properties that were damaged in the 2019 floods. And they've been delayed a little bit because of changes in legal and insurable access to the easement and legal boundary survey work. And that is all of our easements.
Okay, great. Thank you, Missy. Before we move on to the RCPP updates is on the agenda next. Before we do that, 2 things. One, Gianna had mentioned that the Undersecretary FPAC, Undersecretary Robert Bonney had announced the general CRP sign up last week at Pheasant Fest. He also announced a Working Lands for Wildlife bobwhite quail pilot project for a number of states. Nebraska was included in that pilot project. We're focused in the southeast part of Nebraska for that pilot project, but it's something that we in the state have had dedicated funding for, specifically for bobwhite quail habitat already, but now it's a national framework working lands for wildlife pilot. So just wanted to mention that got announced last week as well at Pheasant Fest. That impacts us here in Nebraska. And let's just take a 10-minute break to refresh, regroup here. We'll come back with RCPP updates, and we'll open up any partner if they have updates, and we'll adjourn. So thank you. 10 minutes. At 2:45, we'll be back. Thanks.
So are you retiring? Or a new position?
I gotta
Okay, great. Thanks everyone for that. We are back and we'll have Fred Stevens give us a Regional Conservation Partnership Program update.
All right. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Just wanted to give everyone an update on the RCPP. Their approvals that got approved here back in October. That these were proposals that were sent in the July timeframe for 23. They were reviewed, National approved them. There's 5 of them I wanted to discuss today. They are in the phase of what we call a PPA. We're working through the agreements with the partners. And so once we get that completed and done, then we will start into a full contract then. So sometimes, Kim, I think if you hit the arrow button, maybe it might advance it. There you go. All right, so there's 2 different types of RCPP projects. We have what's called an AFA project. And the AFA project, that means the partners, they're going to take on a very large workload. That they're going to take on the signups, the administration of the contract, paying on the contract. What NRCS will do on the AFAs is that we're in charge of the CPA 52 form. So that's the evaluation form. They're going to be looking at the eligibilities, and then also we're making sure that the practices that were selected for that project meets our standard specs. The other kind of project that a partner could apply for is called a classic project. The best way to describe a classic project is a very same image of what EQIP looks like, where the NRCS, that we would be doing the signups, we would be taking the applications, we'll be doing the ranking, we'll be taking care of all the administration on it. The partners normally on a classic is they're doing all the outreach. And so that's sort of a quick nutshell of the 2. Out of the 5, 3 of them are AFA projects. We have the Kansas-Nebraska Wetland Initiative. We have Agro Dairy Producers Best Management Practice. Then we have another one called the Expansion Soil Health Through Carbon Markets. The 2 classic ones is the Platte NRD Real-Time Advanced Irrigation, and also improving grassland health and connecting resilient lands. We're going to look at the first one here, the Kansas-Nebraska Wetland Initiative. Again, this is a AFA. That Kansas is the lead state on this. So that means that Kansas, they are in charge of developing the agreements and managing the contract with Ducks Unlimited. Ducks Unlimited is the lead partner on this. So we see for the cost share amount, you could look at it, and that there's $7,500,000 in that contract. And again, once it gets approved through the PPA, then that would go into effect. And how that works is that the partners and the NRCS works together on the agreements. Once we come to agreement on it, we send it to the national office. The national office would review it. They would approve it, and then we get back to the state, and the state con would sign off on it to execute it. Those have to be all executed by the state con by May 18th. So it's easy for me to remember because that's my birthday.
Oh, okay. Can you go one more? Oh, so is there not a map tied to that one? Sorry.
I just went forward.
There should have been. Go back to the Kansas one. Do you want to go back?
Nope. Yeah, I was thinking maybe there's, okay, nope, that's fine. We can keep going.
Okay. Yeah. The map's right gone. Okay. So if you get back in and get back out. Or not.
I can.
Okay.
That's what you want me to do.
Okay.
Let me,
It's fine.
do you want me to try and pull it up again to see if the map's there?
Yeah, I don't think that, I don't know if that would do it. I think
okay.
maybe somehow the maps are missing from the slide deck, folks, so we'll just When we send out the final notes, we'll make sure and include the slide deck
Yep.
that has the maps
Yep.
for reference.
All right, so the next one is the dairy project here. It's the agro dairy project. Again, this is an AFA project that South Dakota is the lead state on this one. Their resource concern that they are wanting to help is to help reduce greenhouse gas emission. And so some of the practices they are really wanting to target in this project is nitrogen reduction, cover crops, reduced tillage, energy use from irrigation, and manure management. This one is about a 7-state project. Again, Nebraska is a part of it. Certain parts of Nebraska, and again, make sure I point that out when we send it out that we'll have the map there, because it's only a very small part of northeast Nebraska is going to be hit as part up by Northfork. And so on this project, again, when I say for the financial assistant, that is being shared among the 7 states. So there's going to be $7,447,211 in this contract for cost share funds. The next project is the expansion of soil health through carbon markets. Again, this is another AFA. South Dakota is the lead state on this project. The lead partner is American Coalition for Ethanol. They have put $18,750,000 for this, and this one's going to be shared by 9 states across the Midwest. For Nebraska, though, there are 29 counties that are going to be eligible for this RCPP project. And what they're targeting for practices, they're targeting cover crops and reduced tillage and nutrient management. Go ahead to the next slide. So the next project we're going to be looking at is what we call the Improved Grassland Health Connection Resilient Lands. It's with TNC. This is a classic project. So again, this project will be ran very similar to like how we run our EQIP program. Here, this is for the Sandhills area. So think more of the central and out western Nebraska here. What they're looking for is grazing practices. So we're looking at prescribed grazing. We're looking at brush management, fence, water developments, fire. And so, and again, for this project, there's going to be put in $3,240,960 in this one. This one will be shared with 3 states. So it's going to be with Nebraska, Missouri, and Iowa, where Nebraska will be getting the larger part of that $3 million assistance. And go to the very last one, Amy. And the last one is the Twin Platte Irrigation Project. That is a project here that we're helping with irrigation and with real time. It's a classic again. It's only going to be offered in the Twin Platte NRD. Twin Platte NRD is the lead partner for this project. What we're looking at is $4,716,990 for the project, and that the practice that they're looking at is IWM only. And so that is the 5 projects again that got approved there back in October, and all 5 of the projects we're working on the partnership agreements right now with them. Once those get approved, then that would be slide over into being a contract. And once that happens, then we'll reach out to the counties that would affect, and we'll have a meeting with those counties. So when producers come into the office, that they would be aware of the RCPP project. Any questions?
Okay, thanks.
Before we move out of programs, I did have someone ask me to share something, and so I had to think about it for a little bit, and it is something I'll share. Just information for people, that a change that we've had to implement in the program side of things with cultural resources and NEPA reviews. historically, when a contract was obligated, we would send a letter to the producer or have them come in, however it worked, but you would get a letter saying your contract is obligated. Once you have your design work, you can start your the work in your contract. With IRA and Act Now, and looking at how this whole process works, we are now able to obligate contracts prior to the NEPA review being completed, if a NEPA review is needed. We always do a baseline review, but whether or not it needs a second look on it is where this comes into play. And so we'll always do our first review. Now when we're obligating contracts, the contract will be obligated prior to the on the ground or second NEPA review that might be needed. We send out a letter, and instead of just saying you have to wait for design work or you have to ensure you have your design, now they have to have their design and the NEPA review completed until they can start on anything. So just if you're working with anybody with projects with ours, so you're aware of that, it just has a different look than it has in the past. So be aware that obligation, we still have design work that's needed and we still have NEPA reviews that may be needed on those. So just information to share, because that is a change from the past. So.
Very good, thank you. All right, thanks Cammie and Missy and Fred for the updates there related to programs and easements and RCPP, so thank you. All right, I think we've now moved on the agenda to any of the partner updates, any partners that have items they'd like to share with the entire group. Now's a great opportunity to get that out there. Anything from our partners you want to stop sharing, Cammie, and see?
Yeah.
It is stop sharing on my side.
Just close out of it real quick, but then I'm afraid you're gonna, or close out of it and bring up.
Close out the whole Teams meeting?
No, close out of the, are you running the presentation? You're in presentation mode of the, and then bring up the Teams group.
If it helps at all, Rob, we don't see the presentation anymore out in the field.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Mary. I appreciate that. I think we are, we're working through it now. But any
There you go.
partners that have anything to share with the group?
Robert, I'm Tim Kalkowski, and I'm a private producer, a banker, but I'm also the chairman of the Nebraska Grazing Lands Coalition. Just as an update, I guess I wasn't really prepared to do this, but look us up on our website. We have several grants in place. One of our grants is we put on a grazing school and a ranching for profit school. We do 2 of those each per year. So if you have anybody that wants to get a little more knowledgeable on grazing, we utilize some South Dakota help on the grazing schools because they've been doing it for a long time. We have a ranch tour in June, which will be in Broken Bow, which will go over where the fires were and what they've done. We have coming up, well, those are the main things, the schools, the tour, and then we also house the grassland coordinator for Nebraska, which is Alex McKernan. So any group, his job is to coordinate all efforts. He's had several meetings with the tribals, NRCS, Nature Conservancy, Rainwater Basin, Sandhills Task Force, but to bring all those groups together on anything on grasslands and conservation. So I'll throw his name out. He's a great tool. So
yeah, absolutely. Thank you for sharing that, and I know I'm looking forward to getting up there to the tour in June. So
please,
it's on my radar. So yeah, that's great. Perfect. Katie, yeah, go ahead. Katie.
Hey everyone, I just wanted to quickly introduce myself to those I have not met yet. My name is Katie Hickle. I am the new 319 coordinator for the Department of Environment and Energy. So I think I've been able to get around and meet a lot of you, but I haven't had the privilege of meeting everyone yet. So I wanted to introduce myself, and I also wanted to provide a quick update for DEE. So about, I believe it was a month ago now, EPA put out a call for proposals regarding technical assistance. I actually just heard back from EPA regarding our application, and they have granted us assistance in, we're going to be developing an emergency management plan for the non-point source group. So kind of piggybacking off of a lot of what's been discussed today, we're going to be doing some upcoming work regarding surveying what resources currently exist within the state, basically how they interact with each other, what triggers, I guess, when we step in for emergency management, because we really want to learn from the programs that already have practices in place. But keep an eye out within the next coming month or so, because we're going to try and be, I guess, picking everyone's brains as to how we proceed with this planning. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Any other partners that have any updates they'd like to share with us? All right, very good. Well, thank you very much for attending. Great presentations and a lot of good information. It's like I sound like a broken record. Everyone I come to, I learned something new. It was great to have our Climate Hub present, and got a lot of good information from that group. So appreciate their efforts. So just probably on the logistics side, so next meeting, June 13th, our plan is to have it here at our new facility. We will likely do ahead of time, we will need to get the names of folks that plan to show up the day of the meeting, so we can share that with our security guard down on first floor. So likely in the future, when we have the reoccurring state technical committee meetings, we'll put a call out ahead of time to get the names, so we have that readily available, so there's no hiccups for that part of it. So just wanted to share that a little bit of a tidbit on that. So if we don't have anything else, thank you very much, and have a great rest of your Thursday. Thanks, everyone.